Hey, what's up everyone? Just a quick video to talk about oral tradition versus written text and how they relate to reconstructive reading of the Bible. So my view is that, in the Old Testament, most biblical authors are taking a previous narrative and they are changing it to create a new narrative, right? And so this is more difficult with a written text that was when the previous narrative was a written text, because you have large chunks of text that you have to incorporate into your new narrative, and it's harder to create a new narrative that way. So an example would be like the Yahwist taking the Elohist narrative and spinning it into a Yahwist direction. Some people, you say, well, why don't you just delete? Why didn't the Yahwist just delete the Elohist, right, and just create his new narrative? Well, it's because biblical authors, and the way that they did their propaganda is that they subverted the text, right? They didn't come right at it and say, no, this is wrong, we're just getting rid of it, because that's not going to incorporate the people that believed in the previous narrative, right? So the Yahwist is trying to incorporate the Elohists into the Yahwist cult. In order to do that, he has to use their previous, their Elohist text. And it's not out of respect that he doesn't just delete the Elohist. It is because he needs it to manipulate. And people are gonna, not a lot of literate people back then, but I'm sure a lot of people had parts of that Elohist narrative memorized, and so the Yahwist needed to keep that Elohist narrative, and then just add the Yahwist parts to it in order to manipulate it into a new narrative. Now, the oral tradition is a little easier to manipulate, I think, because the oral narratives, they differ from person to person slightly, but they contain the same elements. So those elements in those oral traditions are really the only things that the biblical author needed to take and to put them into a new context to create a new narrative. So in terms of reconstructive reading, it's harder because there's less there from the original narrative, right? It's the biblical author didn't need to include the entire story as much. He just needed to take the main elements and then spin them into a new direction. So an example of that, another thing too, with oral tradition, they could manipulate it in a way sonically. So the words just had to sound similar to the original words in the previous narrative, in the original narrative. So an example of that would be the origin of Cain's name. So I was reading just today about, where it says Eve acquired Cain by Yahweh. That word acquired there sounds like Cain. And so that line there is an explanation for how Cain got his name. But there's another word that sounds like that sounds like Cain, and it means spear or smith. So spear or smith could have been in the original narrative, and the biblical author is changing the story so that Cain's origin of his name changes in the new narrative. All right, so hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.